The series continues. High upside players going into week 8 of the fantasy football season. This week is a little bit different. We were hit with the apocalypse last week. Now coming into week 8, a little bit different. As all 32 teams, that means we have 16 matchups. That means you're probably struggling with if you should be starting high upside players, safe floor players, maybe players that we all know are superstars but haven't been performing. You're going to have some of these names that do come up on this list coming into week 8 of the fantasy football season. So let's not waste any more time going straight to my first high upside player at the running back position. English is hard today. Dameon Pierce is a high upside player coming into this week, and Devin Singletary. I think depending on your league, if maybe you're in a 12-man, 10-man, or maybe you're in a 16, 14, or a bigger league, Devin Singletary could definitely play a part coming into this week. Look, obviously, Dameon Pierce has been living up to expectations. He has only had 2 games over 10 fantasy points this year. The rest has been under 9 fantasy points, which has been very, very disappointing. And I do believe a lot has to do with how good CJ Stroud has been. Normally, this offense is not able to move the ball down the field with the arm like we saw in years past with Davis Mills. Now CJ Stroud does move the ball down the field, but the matchup is one of the best matchups here for Dameon Pierce going against the Carolina Panthers, who currently give up the second most fantasy points to the running back position. I think if you are in a win now scenario, saying maybe you need to win this week, maybe there is an opportunity where Dameon Pierce can score multiple touchdowns, this is the game. Coming off a bye week, getting healthier, and to be completely honest with you, the Carolina Panthers are coming off a bye week as well, but a lot of their key defensive players are still injured, which means that they're going to be struggling against the run, in my personal opinion, which means Dameon Pierce, the bowling ball that I like to call him, could get the opportunity finally as the ball gets down towards the red zone. He still gets those red zone opportunities, and Dameon Pierce can punch it in. Now, Devin Singletary is a little bit different, right? I kind of did mention if you are in a bigger league, 14, 16, 18, however way your league is set up, I think Devin Singletary could be a good high upside star if you are struggling at the running back position. Maybe you have injuries, whatever the case may be, and you need a running back in a desperation. Devin Singletary can be the guy. We saw him really have his best opportunity in week 6 against New Orleans Saints. 54% of the snap share in week 6, his highest so far this year, 12 carries, 58 yards. He is toting the ball for over 4 yards per carry, which is really great for someone like Devin Singletary. Now, the reason why this is also appealing, and we keep, Zach's bringing him as a stash, eyeball him up as a waiver wire pickup, I'm telling you now he's a high upside player, is because of how good this offense is moving the ball down the field, that if you can get a pass catching back that you can put him in space, that can help your offense a lot better than, in between type of tackle running back, a guy that can get into space, that can block, and can be damaged in the second level. That is Devin Singletary, and I think that's what's exciting. So if you do need a running back with some high upside, I truly believe both of these guys, depending on your team and your matchup, they can be some high upside players going into week 8. All right, my second high upside player going to Miami Dolphins at the running back position is Jeff Wilson. Look, Jeff Wilson this past week didn't have that much opportunity as we all expected. Only one catch out of the air for 4 yards, only saw 14% of the snap share. Now, Raheem Mostert is expected to play coming into this week. And yes, a lot of people are saying, well, Salvon Ahmed saw more opportunities than Jeff Wilson this past week. 37% of the snap share we saw against Philly in week 7. And there have been reports saying that, look, when you can't get things going and rolling, you have to result in trying some new different things. And I think that's exactly what they did last week when they played the Philadelphia Eagles, on prime time, right? And I think that is something significant when you look and don't just think of, well, Salvon Ahmed, had more opportunities. He's a better running back. They're moving on with Jeff Wilson. No, Jeff Wilson, by Coach McDaniel, saying that he is going to get more opportunities. He's been saying that in the report, saying, look, we couldn't get the ball rolling. We're trying some different things. Coming into this week, playing the New England Patriots, who currently give up the 14th most points to the running back position, so essentially a middle-of-the-pack defense, or especially a divisional game, you should expect Jeff Wilson to see more opportunity now. Also, if Raheem Mostert is injured and still not 100%, I wouldn't be surprised if Jeff Wilson maybe out-snaps Raheem Mostert coming into this week, I highly doubt it. But if Raheem Mostert is not 100%, I can easily see Jeff Wilson getting a lot of the opportunities coming into week 8. My third high upside player coming into this week is Gus the Bus. He is playing the Arizona Cardinals. The Cardinals currently give up the 4th most fantasy points to the running back position, and this is a great high upside smash start coming into this week. We saw what he did last week against the Detroit Lions, who currently give up the 3rd least amount of fantasy points to the running back position. Now, look, the Ravens just absolutely dominated the Lions, and we saw that on the ground, especially with Gus. 14 carries, 64 yards, over 5.5 yards per toke, a touchdown, and he had that big run in the air. Caught a pass this past week for 80 yards. Couldn't take it to the house, but he got there. Over 21 fantasy points Gus had last week. Now he has a significantly better matchup against the Arizona Cardinals. There is no doubt in my mind, if you are struggling at the running back position, maybe you have a Monty, a James Conner, a Devon, a Kyron Williams, and you're maybe even a Darrell Henderson you picked up, maybe even somebody that has a tougher matchup coming into this week. Gus does have one of the best matchups coming into this week, and you can easily start him, who has a high upside coming in. And look, Lamar is playing lights out, so you're going to be seeing a lot of red zone opportunities, in my personal opinion, in this game for Gus. Not even just for Gus, but for this offense as a whole. And hopefully Gus definitely benefits from that coming into this week. So Gus the Bus, the high upside player coming into week 8. All right, my next high upside player going to 2 wide receivers in the New England Patriots, Kendrick Bourne and Demario Douglas. Look, these guys have kind of been showing up, and let's start off with Kendrick Bourne. Obviously, in week 1 against Philly, had that crazy game with over 24 fantasy points. If I'm not mistaken, he was like a top 10 wide receiver that week. Then he has a tremendous fall down from weeks 2 to 5, scoring less than 10 fantasy points in those games. And then the past 2 weeks against Vegas and Buffalo, 19 fantasy points, caught 10 out of 11 targets versus Vegas, and then versus Buffalo, caught 6 out of 7 targets, scores a touchdown, has over 16 fantasy points. Now he's playing the Miami Dolphins, who currently give up the 10th most fantasy points to the wide receiver position, a divisional game, and you have to expect the Miami Dolphins to score, as they're one of the highest scoring offenses currently right now in the NFL. You have to expect this team to be going blow for blow. I know sometimes it can be hit or miss with Mac Jones and this New England Patriots, but they've been pretty hot these past couple weeks, so you have to expect them to really be competing coming into this week. Now, the one that I really want to talk about is Demario Douglas. I think Kendrick Bourne is somebody that you can start. Can be really confident. Before I actually go to Demario, here are some names I will be starting Kendrick Bourne over. I think of someone like a Jalen Reed, a Jahan Dotson, a Brandon Cooks. I think of someone like Elijah Moore, a Jerry Jeudy, a KJ Osborne can be in conversations. Even a DeAndre Hopkins. Do you want to start DeAndre Hopkins with Will Levis there? I'm not necessarily sure I want to do that. What about a Michael Thomas? Depending on what you need. On the safe floor, Michael Thomas averaging over 10 fantasy points per game. Obviously, Kendrick Bourne is high hit or miss, obviously. So keep that in mind when you are thinking about starting Kendrick Bourne. Now, Demario Douglas is somebody that has been getting more opportunity, has been seeing more of the field this past week against Buffalo. 62% of the snap share, his highest so far this season. Caught 4 out of 6 targets, one of his highest outings so far, receptions, and his second highest targets so far this season, 54 yards as well, over 11 fantasy points, his highest fantasy outing this season as well. And you can see that continuing, increasing. English is hard, like I said earlier. So if you are in a deeper league, 14, 16, 18, whatever that looks like for you, and you need a flex, maybe you have a 2 wide receiver start and a 3 flex, and Demario Douglas is somebody you can start because you are struggling with injuries at the wide receiver position. He is somebody I will be interested in popping into my flex position, hoping with that high upside, especially, once again, like I said, the Miami Dolphins, one of the highest scoring teams in the NFL currently right now. They're going to have to score. They're going to have to push the ball down the field, and Demario Douglas can be that guy that can give you some high upside. So Kendrick Bourne, Douglas, 2 guys that you could be starting that give you high upside going into week 8. All right, my 5th high upside player is A.J. Dillon, running back for the Green Bay Packers, and I'm not excited about this one, but I'm bringing him because there could be opportunity coming into this week. Now, Aaron Jones is technically going to be starting. It's technically going to be in this game, but as the reports we saw with Matt LaFleur saying that he's still not 100%, so we're going to be careful with him. I personally don't believe you're going to see more than 45% of the snaps here going to Aaron Jones coming this week. I mean, you saw last week against Denver, who had one of the best, matchups coming in. Aaron Jones, I think he was a smash start for everyone in the fantasy community, and he only sees 36% of snaps here, and it's because he's not fully healthy. It's because he's not 100% with that hamstring injury, and you can see that when he's playing his game. It's a mental barrier, and this offense doesn't produce and move the ball the way we hope and expected them to with Aaron Jones on the field. Now, A.J. Dillon has been seeing those opportunities. Obviously, these past 2 weeks against Vegas, right before the bye, 64% of the snaps here, 20 attempts on the ground, 73 yards. He finds the end zone as well. That's over 13 fantasy points. He gets you that quote-unquote high upside with that over double-digit span. So A.J. Dillon is that high upside in a bigger league. But if you're struggling at the running back position and or injuries, this is what you're hoping for. 13, 12. I mean, if you can get more than double digits, you're happy with this opportunity. Then he plays Denver. He played Denver in week 7, 15 carries, 61 yards, caught 2 out of 2 in the air, over 11 fantasy points. You were happy with that if you started A.J. Dillon with the expectations because of, Aaron Jones was playing. So think of the same thing here. Once again, 10, 11, 13 fantasy points that he can get you against the Minnesota Vikings, a divisional game, especially at home at Lambeau Field. This could be a good game for A.J. Dillon. So that's some high upside play if you need it with A.J. Dillon. All right, my next guy here that I'm really skeptical to even tell you guys, but if you are in a deeper league, 14-man league or higher, and you need help at the running back position, I think this is somebody that you could potentially start that has high upside. I know I'm going to get roasted in the chat, but it is Cam Akers, okay? Cam Akers is playing against the Green Bay Packers, who currently give up the third most amount of points to the running back position. Now you're saying, well, Alexander Mattison is there, and he's clearly been doing better. He has been getting opportunities. I understand. But we need to take what we saw last week into context. Maybe it's just a matchup base. But if it's not, and if it is a trend that we're going to be seeing, that's exactly what we need to account for. Week 7, Cam Akers against the San Francisco 49ers, 39% of the snap share versus Alexander Mattison, 53%. Now here is the kicker. The attempts on the ground for Cam Akers was 10 attempts. Alexander Mattison, 8. The receptions in the air, Alexander Mattison called 2 out of 3. Cam Akers called 2 out of 3. Now, it's not a lot by any means. Cam Akers had 13 total attempts in that game. Alexander Mattison had a total of 11 attempts in that game. Not saying that is a huge kicker, not saying that we need to look at this minuscule type of opportunities, but when you're thinking about this team and when you're thinking about this backfield, that it can truly be a 50-50 hot hand type of thing. Because when Cam Akers was in there, we saw those hard runs, those tough, quick opportunities breaking down in between the tackles. Not saying Alexander Mattison didn't have that, but that is something that they could be definitely interested in when they see Cam Akers bringing a different type of energy, a different type of speed to the game, even though that's crazy to say when we talk about Cam Akers and Alexander Mattison. Both of these guys are viewed as mid-running backs, and that's exactly what you're probably going to get. But with the opportunity and the way this matchup could potentially be against the Green Bay Packers, who currently give the third most amount of fantasy points to the running back position, I think Cam Akers, if you are in a 14 or higher man league and you need some opportunities, that is somebody who you can be starting coming into week 8 that has high upside. So be careful. Comment down below if you do have, is it Cam Akers or somebody else? Is it Cam Akers or whatever the case may be? Cam Akers or Demarcado, Cam Akers or Justice Hill or Rashad or Tajay Spear, Latavius Murray, even though he played, Antonio Gibson, those are the type of deeper leagues that I'm thinking about, okay? So keep that in mind. All right, my next player with high upside is a wide receiver, and that is Jameson Williams. Yes, he is a high upside play, and we have to really understand why that is. Okay, he is playing the Las Vegas Raiders, and right now the Raiders are pretty good against the pass. They currently give the 7th least amount of points to the wide receiver position. But I think a lot of context really plays a part here when you think of Jameson, right? You have to think of where he's playing. He's playing on Monday night at home in Detroit, which I think is a huge plus. We saw, the interesting news about Marvin Jones, who's going to be stepping away from football. He's going to be no longer with the team, and he got released by the Lions, which means Jameson Williams has to be stepping up into this opportunity coming into this week. Not only that, we have to account for the targets that we saw. We saw one of his highest target share. Yes, it was against the Baltimore Ravens. Yes, it was against a shootout, and they were just throwing things deep. But if they continue to do that, if he would have caught 3 out of those 6 targets, just imagine how many points he would have had, how many yardage he would have had. He is that deep pass type of player that if you do need a high upside type of play, that is exactly what you need. Let's just say, you have somebody on Sunday night, or against Bears and Rams, or the second slate of games with Bengals and 49ers, and maybe you have a Tyler Boyd in a deeper league. This is deeper league type player, right? Mind you, 14-man league or plus. Maybe you got a Tyler Boyd, you got a 3 flex type of start, and you can start Tyler Boyd, Jameson Williams, or you can start a Jawan Jennings, Jameson Williams. You can start a Darnell Mooney, Jameson Williams, a Quentin Johnston, a Jameson Williams, without the question marks of Josh Palmer coming in if he's going to start or not start. If he catches 3 of those targets, Jameson Williams, and you need 10 points, that can happen, because we saw that against week 6 against Tampa Bay. Caught 2 out of 3 targets, 53 yards and a touchdown. That's 13 fantasy points right there. That can happen in this game against Vegas. And I think that is the type of high upside play that I'm willing to take a chance on when I'm thinking of him. So if you do need that deep pass, you need him to catch 2 out of the 7 bomb passes that he's going to be trying to catch, and you can get that, and hopefully one of those lands in a touchdown. That can be that high upside play that you need. So Jameson Williams, if you need a high upside play, start him in week 8. All right, my last player on this list is Deontay Johnson. One of my favorite players of this year. Obviously got injured with that hamstring injury, and we've only seen 2 games with Deontay so far this year. Week 1, caught 3 out of 6, over 48 yards, over 7 fantasy points. He does leave that game in the end of the 3rd quarter. Then he has his first game back after coming off of IR, game the Las Vegas Rams, caught 5 out of 6 targets, over 12 fantasy points, 79 yards, and that is the type of stuff I'm expecting. Now, I know he was limited in practice these past couple days, but I've been seeing Twitter videos, I've been seeing videos at practice, and he looks healthy. He did get removed off the injury report, and he is good to go for week 8. So I am going to be starting him with confidence. He's playing the Jacksonville Jaguars, who currently give the 12th most fantasy points to the wide receiver position. And we've seen that before. We've seen them give up a significant amount of points to this team. We've seen the quick slants in Chris Olave. That's Deontay Johnson. We've seen the quick slants, the big body passes with Mike Thomas, and that's George Pickens, right? Deontay Johnson only seeing 66% of the snap share this past week. And his career, even last year, if we go back to last year, he was averaging over 85% of the snap share. And that's exactly what I'm hoping and expecting coming into week 8 of the fantasy football season. So if you do need a high upside play, Deontay Johnson, you should be starting with confidence. And, obviously there are so many different ways that you can go about starting Deontay Johnson. Curtis Samuel, Christian Watson, Jerry Jeudy, Elijah Moore, DeAndre Hopkins, Michael Thomas, Josh Palmer. I am starting Deontay Johnson over all those guys, like KJ Osborne, Jackson Smith, and Jigba. There are so many names that I am starting him over, Deontay Johnson over all those guys. So keep that in mind, guys. Hopefully you get this dub in week 8. And as always, it's all love.
Now that those idiots are done talking, who needs some rankings?
Hell yeah, I need some rankings.
Then use promo code LAND, L-A-N-D, for 30% off any membership at flockfantasy.com.
Oh.
It's so easy, even your grandma could scan that QR code right there.